it, go for it, and I will find it. They seem to move things around on me on these on a regular basis. So, what are you going to do? Anyways, let's jump into this. Like I said, this is Lofty Essentials. Our goal for today is mainly just to get you, your roadmap that you need to get your Lofty set up. Some basic instructions. It's admittedly, an amazing platform. It's an amazing program, and it can be highly confusing at the same time. It's one of those things where it's almost like they give you a Ferrari and it's parked in your garage, but you still have to assemble it before you can drive it. So that's kind of how I look at the Lofty platform. So luckily for me, I'm a mechanic of some sorts, to where I was able to, when we jumped onto Lofty. So my quick history with, the software is that we jumped onto it last year. And so we're able to jump in pretty quick and just piece the things together, and go through it. So I'll go over that here in a minute. So this is kind of our schedule for today. We've got about an hour to go. Goal is to kind of keep this fast paced. I'll give you the opportunity at the end of this, if you want to request a copy of this, basically the slides, all that stuff, you can get a copy of this. I'm going to record the video that we're doing. So if you want access to the recording later, you can have that as well. So I'll give you an opportunity to reach out to me to set that up. But basically, that's our introduction. Why you're here, obviously, I'm assuming it's because you want to learn more about the Lofty platform, hoping to utilize it in your business at a higher level. Learn a little bit about me. Why am I the one teaching this? We'll review the key setups of the program, understand daily workflow, landing pages, smart plans, and we'll talk shortly about integration. So that's kind of the schedule for today. So ground rules, I've got everybody muted. So that shouldn't be a big deal. I don't know if there's a way to raise your hand or maybe unmute if you did have a specific questions, but we'll go from there. Like I said, do place questions on the side. So, write those things down, send them over to me. Like I said, I couldn't find a way to do a chat thing on this thing, but we'll figure it out as we go, or just unmute and ask the question. That's fine. And then obviously we'll try to get to everybody's questions. So let's jump into it. My brief quick history, I was originally licensed in 2003 at a company called Koenig & Stray in Libertyville, Illinois. So I am a fourth generation real estate professional. Not my parents, but my great grandpa, my grandparents on both sides, aunts, uncles. It skipped my parents and then dropped down to me. I'm the last of my cousins or anybody in my generation. Nobody younger than me and my family is in real estate. So hopefully I'm not part of a dying breed for the family, but we'll see, right? Consistent multi-million-dollar producer, consistently hitting over 200,000 in personal GCI every year, hit multiple customer awards, blah, 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 right? I've hit the icon level when I was with EXP multiple times. So, I don't say any of this stuff to brag. It's just my credentials to saying, I think I've learned a few things, and I don't mean this next statement to be completely negative. Maybe I do, but there's a lot of people out there training on the Lofty platform and giving advice on the Lofty platform that don't actually sell real estate. They are more the techie side of things, but they don't actually sell anything, right? So their ideas may sound really good on paper, but do they actually work in the real world? And what I'm kind of showing you as far as the setups, what we talk about, is active stuff. Like, this is what we do every day to build our business. So what we are doing is working in our business. These aren't just concepts for how we have things set up. It's how we build, it's how we run our business on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of where I'll end on that note. These are the different CRMs that I've used. So this is why, for me, it was really easy to jump into Lofty. I mean, back in the day, I was in Act, then Outlook, then hosted, we did self-hosted. I mean, I had a server in my office that I had to have set up 24/7. It was a pain in the butt, but it was high tech at the time. I used Market Leader, E-Edge through Keller Williams. I used Follow Up Boss extensively. I really liked that platform, to be honest with you. Infusionsoft was cool. It was kind of the same thing. It was even more, I feel like with Lofty, you just have to put a few things together. Whereas with Infusionsoft, you literally had a crate full of boxes and you had to figure out how to put the Ferrari together. Brivity was awesome, but it had a lot of things I didn't like about it from the plug and play perspective. And then obviously when I was with EXP, we used KV Core extensively. That program I actually liked better than Brivity because it had a lot more plug and play ability. And now we're in Lofty. And like I said, we joined Lofty last year. So we're about 8 months in at this point. But we had everything set up and probably moving at a high speed within like 60 to 90 days, I would say. So, I mean, I live and breathe this kind of stuff, which is bizarre how I still have time to sell real estate, but it is what I do. So that's that. All right. So these are some of the settings I want to cover. Your call settings. So I'm going to preface this by saying you must have a personal Lofty number in order to do this. I've helped some people recently, especially at Real Broker, who have the Real Broker setup. And initially off the gate, you're given what's called a smart number for the company. It's the company's smart number. So if you jump in and you just have the basic package with a brokerage package, you probably don't have your own personal number. You're using the company's personal number. What that means is if I take that phone number and I hand it to my client, and that client's phone number is in my Lofty, when they call the number, it will go to me. The problem is if they hand it off to their friend and say, hey, here's Len's number, call him, but I don't have that friend's number in my Lofty, you dial that number and it's going to round robin to all the agents inside your company versus going direct to you. So to me, it's worth the additional small fee. I don't know what it was. I think it was like 15 or 30. I think it was like 15 or 20 bucks or something like that, 25. I don't know the exact number. I have it written down somewhere else. But if that's something you want more information on, I'd be happy to get that to you if you want to learn more about that. But yeah, so this call settings, you must have a personal number to do it. We'll talk about property alerts, market snapshot, some of the AI settings that you should have, social studio, which if you don't have that set up, get that set up yesterday. We're getting free leads every day, I would say, on our team. Sorry, my business partner's off to the right, so at least I have some interaction on my end. Talk about pipelines and segments, and of course, some website settings to go over. So let's dive in. First and foremost, let's look at, hang on. Why isn't this changing screens? There we go. Here's your call settings, right? So this is, once again, personal number. So you're seeing my stuff here. So this is a snapshot of my personal dashboard. This is my personal virtual number right here. And this is my team number, right? So I actually have my own seat. So our team has its own seat. When we jumped into Lofty, we were with EXP at the time. And as I measured everything out, I looked at the package that EXP had with Lofty. And honestly, if you're with Real, it's a better, turnkey offering than what other companies probably offer. So it made more sense for us just to have our own seat. So that's our team number. So if somebody dialed, that's what we have on our signs. That goes into round robin for our agents and our team. But this is our personal number. So one of the things for the outbound call type that I highly recommend is bridge mode, right? So if you don't have it in bridge mode, what ends up happening is that you will be, it's going to be voice over IP. And I prefer bridge where it's just it'll like when I hit dial on a lead, my phone starts to ring, I answer it, then I hear it ring, which I prefer versus voice over IP because that's going to be dependent upon your internet provider where you're at. I find that internet speeds when you're out and about are not usually as strong as maybe say, a different one. So that's just been my observation, right? And so then the other thing that you're looking at here is the phone number, right? So that's my cell phone number. Now, I've been told, and be careful, right? So a lot of people use like better like systems like Call Central or Google Voice, or like a different kind of like a digital number. This needs to be a hard programmed cell phone number. So this is my cell phone number, and dials that through. Because what happens is, and this is getting really technical, so I won't go too deep into it, but if you have a digital, like a virtual phone number calling another virtual phone number that's now got to forward back to a hardscaped number, like on your cell phone, it's just going to get mixed up. So your best bet is to just put in your hardcore. Nobody's going to ever see this number, only you see it. So that's the good thing. Incoming call type, same thing. Put in your personal number, your displayed caller ID. Now, for me personally, I like to keep all of my conversations with my leads and my clients inside of the Lofty platform. So I make sure that my default outbound caller ID is here, and my default caller ID for texting is the exact same number. So you'll notice personal number 418-84336, same thing here. Click, 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 all the same, all the way down the road, right? And so these are some additional call settings. I want the call recording on. I use it for coaching. I use it for good listening back. One of the things I love about having the call recorded is that I'm not always at my desk, right? So if I'm out and about, I can pretend that I'm writing down a phone number, right? So, oh yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that's great. We can help you out with that. What's a good email address I can send that to? I ask that question all the time. And then I just have them, I'm like, can you spell that for me? And I'm just sitting there driving, right? Oh, okay, yeah, got it. And I know I can go back and listen to that call and back, rewind and all that stuff over and over again, because I've hit that call recording. I want to transfer incoming calls to a backup phone number. I just have it set up, yes. And I could put that to an additional number, right? So if you have an assistant or somebody, I just have it go back to me. But I guess I don't need that on, but you could put like an assistant on there, right? So those who, maybe you run a team that's got an assistant, you could say, okay, well, have it go to me, but if I can't get the number, I still want it routed there. I want an ISA to get to it. So you have a lot of options on that. And then it just gives you the amount of options that if you don't answer that first call, then it's going to reroute after 10 seconds. And then you could have that apply to all your users. So for you running a team, you could say, yeah, for everybody on the team, I want the same thing. And then what this does is forward incoming text messages to another number. What happens with that is every time I get an incoming text from a lead, I get notified on my cell phone, because at the end of the day, the Lofty app is still a software. It's still an app. It's still, digital. So I want to make sure that I get that hardscape copy. I want that hard copy on my phone, just in case the push notification on the Lofty app doesn't work. So these are some basic call settings. Like, so when somebody onboards in our team, I've got this screenshot, these exact screenshots, and I say, this is how you set this up. And like, as long as these are set up this way, everything will go through. We tested out the different variations and we found this to be the best. All right, let's move on to property alerts. So what happens is, and you can see up in the top here, you've got property alerts, market snapshots, and market reports. When you're inside of a contact record, inside that contact record, these are mainly the three things that you're going to do. Now, one thing I will preface with the property alerts on is, if I'm in a contact record and they're only listed as a seller, property alerts does not show up. So I would just add them as a buyer and a seller if you also want to send them property alerts. So what this is going to do is, these are your automated settings, right? So when I'm doing like a lead import, or a lead comes through the system and there's an option to create, an automated property alert, these are the settings that it's going to come through. So I haven't really excluded any sources, but you could. So if you find like maybe there's a source that just keeps coming in that's like causing you issues, add it to that. I've excluded these pipelines, bad leads, do not contact, outbound, active. So some of these I've got it and said, no, I want to manually do these. My whole purpose with this is I mainly want to do it with prospects, right? So as prospect comes in, create the thing. Property status, I only want to send active homes. To me, there's nothing worse than sending a lead a property that's what we call like UCB, under contract accepting backups. In Illinois, because I am licensed in both Illinois and Arizona. In Illinois, it's listed as CTG, contingent. So there's nothing worse than sending a property and somebody goes, oh my gosh, this one's great. And you're like, oh yeah, I can't sell you that one. Like, well, then why the heck did you send it to me? So days listed, I don't, whatever. This location criteria, it says same as inquired city. So this is cool. So if a lead comes in and they're looking in, Chicago, Phoenix, it's going to keep it inside of there. So you have some options there. I've actually chosen to say open house only no. I don't, my thought process on that, just to be honest with you, is I don't want people to necessarily see the open houses that are going on, because all I'm doing by sending open house information is I'm inviting them to go meet with a realtor who's a complete stranger who could potentially pick them up. There's a difference between, a lead and a client. There's a big difference between a lead prospect client. So these are mainly leads. So with my leads, I'm not going to send a lead off into Never Neverland to go to an open house. And they're like, oh, it's got this great website I visited and saw this list of open houses, and I met my agent there, and there I am. I don't get anything from that. That's not why I have these things set up. This is up to you on the frequency. When we moved over from KV Core, we loaded in over 40,000 contacts. So I looked at my allocation of emails that I can send every month. And if I had this set up on daily, I would have burned through that. I think I actually accidentally did burn through it in like 4 days. So I had to backtrack and change all these to weekly. So most of my like prospect leads, they're just on a weekly drip. So there's ways to change this, and I'll go over that in a minute. But the idea is that set this up immediately after lead registration. They just get a weekly drip. Really, the idea is that as they look at more stuff, what ends up happening is then you can increase it and say, okay, well, they're looking every time it hits, they're looking at it. Every time it hits, they're looking at it. Let's move it up. All right, market snapshots. So the market snapshot, while it's a cool tool, it's just meant to start a conversation, right? That's all any of these are. Property alerts, market snapshots, market reports. Those are just conversation starters. So once again, I'm not excluding any sources. I'm just putting seller or buyer and seller. I'm not excluding any pipelines. I only want to send the sold ones because this is an idea of what's happening inside that snapshot. Location criteria, I have it set to any because it'll choose either the city or the zip code that they are associated with. So I just said, give me both. I can narrow these down later, but for generic, I want to do it, try to keep it as open as possible, because I'd rather, it depends on what type, part of the town they're in, right? I live in a town called Gilbert, which is 300,000 some people who live there, but I also sell in towns where it's 5,000 people. So in the highly, concentrated amounts of, parts of town, there's a lot of data, but in those outskirts, there's not a lot of data. So I wanted to be able to grab as much as I can, and I can always, as I'm going through, I can always clean them up later. But remember, this is like, it comes in, what am I sending out right away? I do like to keep this frequency as bi-weekly because I'm also sending a market report. So the idea is the market report goes out once a week. The market snapshot goes out every 2 weeks. It's got 2 weeks worth of data. So they're getting 3 emails with value every single month. I've just chosen Thursday as the default. You can choose, I've got Thursday morning. You can choose whatever you want on that piece, but this is just how I've set this up. And as you can see, that's the link that you can go to make these settings change. The next one is the market report. This one's real simple. Exclude source, no. I've got it turned on. No pipeline exclusions, because to me, this should go to everybody. Like, there's nobody who shouldn't get this, in my opinion. And so same as inquired zip code. Now, my thought process behind doing the zip code versus doing the city is 2 of the places I'm licensed in have massive numbers of zip codes. Go to Google and type, how many zip codes are in Chicago? How many zip codes are in Phoenix? Tons. I mean, the list is, it's huge. So for me, I found it easier because if you've sold in these, these cities, if you sell in any type of top part where it's a larger city, there's a difference between, 60, what was my zip code in Chicago when I lived there? I can't remember anymore. But there's a 60611 versus 60640. Big difference between those two zip codes. One's, downtown, one's in uptown. So those two zip codes have a major difference in average market time, average sales price. I live in Gilbert. There's a difference between 85233 and 85234 and 85328. Phoenix is the same thing, like all these bigger cities. And then if you're like, well, how does that help me? Well, I grew up in a town called Algonquin in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. Well, the whole town has one zip code. In fact, the two towns next to it have one zip code, 60102. That encompasses, actually, no, now Lake in the Hills says 60156. But you can see how I can just, by putting a zip code, it also doubles for the smaller towns. It doubles as hitting the whole town. For the bigger towns that have multiple zip codes, it keeps things, centrally located. So that's the market report. The nice thing about the market report is it doesn't try to pin a value on a property. It just says, here's what's going on in your zip code, which is cool, because I do have some issue with some of these automated valuations. And if you didn't know the valuation, so when the market report goes out, there's a button. I love market reports for this. There's a button right on top, right as I get the email. It says, request home valuation. We get tons of these requests every single month. Caveat that I will tell you is that it pulls from Zillow. I mean, it's just, the number's always identical to Zillow. So, all right, AI settings. Let's jump into this. By default, your assistant's name is Anna. I don't really know anybody who's changed that. This may get me in trouble for saying this, but I preferred to put a woman's name on there versus a man's name or a dude's name or even a neutral name, just because I think people are more willing to talk to a woman than they are to a dude. That was just my personal opinion. I'd rather talk to a lady myself, especially when buying a house. I'm less likely to yell at a woman than I am a guy. So that's why we kept it as Anna. Call forwarding. So this is, remember, you can set this up individually and universally, but I have it set to go here if nobody answers. I have call forwarding set to go to the lead, assigned agent. So if it goes to an agent on the team, person calls, it'll just reroute directly to. So our entire team has this phone number as the AI's phone number that goes out. The text bot settings, I'm not going to go into call screening settings because that's a new setting that they just came out with. And to be completely honest with you, I haven't even really had time to play with it and test it in real life. But the welcome message delay, I have set for a 4-minute delay. I don't want it going in right away. My thought process on that is that we all know about speed to lead. I get that, right? Well, speed to lead is the agent. The AI, in my opinion, is not an ISA replacement. It's not an agent replacement. It's an agent enhancement. It's an ISA enhancement, right? So our job as the real estate agent we're the ones who jump on things, right? But at 4 minutes, if I'm in a meeting, if I'm out showing homes, if I'm on a listing presentation, then I don't mind the AI kind of kicking in because, to help me out. But I also don't need it jumping in as I'm jumping in, because it becomes very cumbersome when you're calling and you're talking to your client or your lead, who's your future client, and simultaneously they're getting text messages from Anna. So that becomes cumbersome. So the idea is you're the agent, you jump on the leads. I avoid rental inquiries because depending on what part of the country, and you may say, well, you should never avoid a rental inquiry. For me, I do. Like they pay jack squat here in Phoenix. So and I just don't have time for it. So we avoid them. I would say, especially in Phoenix, something like 90% of all rentals are through property management companies. So we only see 5 to 10% of the rental homes available on our MLS. So it's just 99% of the time we refer them to a property management company. So that's why we have that. Yes, I want long-term follow-up. Yes, I want notification when the lead responds to the AI assistant. Absolutely, yes, make sure that's set up. you need to know when somebody says, yes, I'd like to, you know, blah, blah, blah. You need to know that happened. So that's key there. And then live chat on website, absolutely. I want on my website, there's a little pop-up. How can I, you know, I want people to interact with that. Here's some additional settings. I've got our time set between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. for the AI to have their conversations. I had it set for 24 hours a day, and I had some decent leads get pretty mad because all of a sudden there was one instance where a lead woke up at like 3 a.m. And so she's on there, she's looking at properties online. And Anna jumps in and she's like, oh, I see you're looking at some properties. How can I help? And the lead, the client, who I'm still trying to convert, she basically was like, don't ever text me again. She unsubscribed. You know, she's like, it's 3 a.m. So it was kind of one of those things where, you know, the person probably had insomnia, was just like doing zombie mode. And all of a sudden it's like, dude, I didn't invite you into this conversation. So I'm like, all right, let's be cognizant of that. So we put in some time frames on there. I've got it for all lead sources, different pipelines. You can choose all stuff. And I want all my agents on my team to be able to access it. You know, I've basically got this on for all three of these, except for renters, obviously. But these are some quick settings for your AI. Social Studio. So the Social Studio piece, this is highly important. This right here, when you log in to, and you click this link, there's this settings button right here. These are your auto post settings. You can go through here and you can change the default content on how this is. So if you have it coming soon, exciting news. Now, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I left all these at default. I haven't changed any of this stuff. You can change it if you'd like, but I've just left it at just default because I like kind of the way it was set up. So I'm like, there's no reason for me to change it. You know, here's the auto post listing rules. This is where you really want to set up your stuff. And, you know, like for us, all of my listings, I want this to go everywhere when I can, right? Team listings, honestly, the way that our Lofty is set up, and I don't know if this is unique to us or this is just how everybody's is set up, but this is actually all the company listings. And so I have access to 4 different MLSs. So Phoenix, Sedona, Arizona, Payson, Arizona, and Chicago's, the Chicagoland MLS. So it pulls for team listings from all 4 of those. So anytime anyone inside of Real Broker has a new listing, it can go everywhere. And when I had all these turned on, it was just like, it was nonstop posting stuff. And I'm like, all right, I need to slow that down a little bit because it's, you know, there is such thing as overkill. So I'm like, let's just do the new listings, under contract and sold. So I got rid of the open houses, price reduced, back to market. But for our stuff, obviously I want to promote it. I have all the profiles set up. I just wanted to show you that you could modify these so you could put them where you want to put them. But, you know, so here is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Google My Business. The Google My Business piece, in my personal opinion, is an important part to put that in there. Just because, you know, it's Google. Why not do that? All right, moving on to pipelines and segments. I told you this was going to be fast moving. Pipelines and segments. So they just changed this format. Like, I mean, I announced this class and then they changed the format like the next day. So I was like, okay, I got to like reconvene all this stuff. But it's actually, for me personally, I like the new layout better than I like the old layout. I mean, I like the old layout, but this part I really like. So when you're in Lofty, here's your header. When you go under your people, you have all your pipelines here. You can change that through this little gear button right here. So on top of your screen, just hit the gear button and then you'll have your pipeline settings. This is basically where you can add or delete pipelines. Now, depending on where your role is, if you're on a team, you know, like my team members, they can't change this stuff. Like I have control over the pipelines. So the admins have access to this stuff, but the team members do not. So just if you log in and you're like, well, I'm on a team and you're trying to change your pipelines, and if you don't have this ability, that's why. Just talk to your team leader, and you as a team can kind of like maybe have some conversations and masterminds around the best way to do your pipeline. But that's where you would go and do that. I've set this new one called outbound. This is people we just market to. So, for instance, if I have a lead that comes in and, I find out the phone number's bad, well, then typically what I'll do is I'll just drop them into outbound, because I don't want to leave them in prospect, because to me, a prospect is anybody who has come into my system. I've reached out to them, but they haven't responded yet. My active leads are the ones who I've reached out to and they've responded. But I don't want to keep trying to reach out to somebody if they don't have a phone number. So I just leave it in outbound. And so that's where I've just left that as an outbound. That's where that came from as far as a pipeline. Your segments, you have two ways to get there. You have your segments here. This is where you create and manage. This goes to show you, like, I've got my pond, all the different things. I have a whole series on segments. I love segments. This is probably my favorite part of Lofty. It shows you, like here, like, we'll just say like these super hot, right? So it shows that I have 32 that are expired and 6 that are not expired. So out of 38 leads that I have listed as super hot, I need to reach out to 32 of them. 6 of them are right in line. And so it's a quick reminder and showing me, how to follow up with people. Like, what's my follow-up? And that's my reminder here, right? Like, these are every 14 days, one every day, every 2 days, 3 days, 7 days, 14 days. You can set this any way you'd like. So it allows you to set the pace. This is where you do the settings. So under Lofty People Segments, you can click on reports. There's all sorts of actions you can do inside of here. So there's a lot to do inside of here, but I recommend setting up the reminder. You're missing out if you're not using the reminders. How do you work inside of this on a day-to-day basis? Well, you can either go to segments, click on where it says expired, and then work those leads, or you can go into your normal pipeline. And when you're in your pipeline with your people, you'll see on the side, segments is an option right here. So this is how I've got my setup, is I go into the people view, I hit segment, or I hit, my filters. I go here, I select all segments, and I take that super hot segment, and I'll save it. And what it does is it puts it up here on the top. So now there's my super hot right here, right? Well, there's my super hot. So instead of having to go click, I can just go into here, hit super hot, and it automatically funnels and shows me all the people I need to be talking to that day. Because I have it set up to show me only the super hots that I need to talk to today. Remember, this point of a CRM is to have the system show you who you should be reaching out to today, who is raising their hand, who has maybe not raised their hand but should be raising their hand. How do you identify your hot leads? Well, this is how you do it, is through the segments. And so these shortcuts say, boom, click on who are my super hot people? Good, I need to talk to these people today. Who are my hot people? Good. Who are my warm, cold? I work my way through every single day, and that's how I kind of work through the system. So let's move over to a different part of the site, right? So now we're going to talk about some of the basic website settings. Now, whether you've got like the admin access, or if you're an agent site, you've got different layers of what you can do. So, inside the team leader portion, inside the admin side, even if you're an individual agent who has their own seat inside of the company, you should have full theme control. You can do blog posts. You can do AI blog posts. You can pick your areas, add widgets. So like if you've got maybe like a blog that you set up, you can add these different widgets. Creating landing pages. That's technically inside your marketing tools, but it seems to always reroute you back through to the website. And then you've got full custom settings for lead capture and things like that. Now, as a agent, you've only got access to listing filters. You've got access to some of your lead capture settings, and you can do some integrations. So like Google Voice, or not Google Voice, but like Google Analytics, any other third-party stuff. Like I saw Zillow's in there, even though I'm an anti-Zillow agent. You have that access in there. This is kind of your theme overview. So that's where you can see blog, AI blog, your menu, landing pages, organizational information. You have access to all that. You've got your theme editor here, so you can add pages. You can do whatever you want inside of there. You can funnel your listings. So like maybe you just say, look, you know, for us, we had an agent on our team who did a lot of work with like manufactured homes. Now in Arizona, I don't know how it is on other parts of the country, but in Arizona, you could have a manufactured home on leased land where you rent the land underneath you, or you could own the land. And some of these leased land homes sold for like $4,000, $5,000. I don't want those on my website, right? I don't want to showcase that stuff because there's just no business in it. Like there's not enough, you know, it's kind of like the rentals, right? There's not enough meat on the bone. So I can go into these listings and I can funnel those out and say minimum price point. Like let's do 100,000 or above. And that'll scrape those out of the website for you. Areas. So you can pick areas of expertise. We'll show you that in a second. Widgets and then the settings. So this is where you would do like the blog citing, choosing the blog type. You can either do a general blog or you can feature a listing, and you can allow the AI to do it. So the other day I wrote a blog. I just hit try now and I just put the topic and I hit generate and it wrote the whole thing for me. And I read it and I'm like, all right, that was pretty good. All I had to do was come up with a title. So that AI blog writer is pretty slick. Same thing with featuring a listing. If you just took a new listing and you want to blog about it, or if you post about it, boom, click it, put the address, and it'll put it all together for you. So that there's really no setup involved in that. It's ready to go. Just want to let you know that was there because a lot of people seem to miss that. These are your areas. So when you click add new area, what ends up happening is you have two options. It's going to either ask you for like a city or a neighborhood. Play around with these. So what I found inside of like, the cities seem to do pretty well, but I try to narrow it down to a neighborhood. I find that the neighborhoods that I type in inside of Illinois' MLS seem to function better than the neighborhoods I put in Arizona. So maybe it's just, I'm working with support on this because it's a very valuable tool. It gives you great information. So, play around with it, but the cities are gold. You can assign it to certain people. So it allows them to create their own landing pages based off of the areas that you've chosen. And so it'll show up in their drop-down menu as an area. So if you have an agent who's like, look, I work Las Vegas or, Lake Tahoe, right? So maybe somebody on your, in your organization works Lake Tahoe more than somebody else. You could go cities, add new cities, Lake Tahoe, and then you could just choose that agent on your team. And then they could go in and they could do everything they wanted to do in the back end of the site through when they're on this areas, they'd have, or when they're trying to create a landing page, they could create a landing page specifically for Lake Tahoe. Whereas the other agents maybe wouldn't be able to. These are your widgets. So these are cool. So like if you were gonna like I said, if you had a blog page, things like that, you can have like featured listings and put those on your blog page. You've got, this is more of a grid style. So these are just the two types where people could do some searching on a separate website. And obviously the idea is that it's going to lead capture and back to the website. My whole thing with lead capture is you want to do everything you can to constantly funnel everything back into your Lofty site. I don't use Google Forms for this stuff. I don't use, some of these other stuff that you would see where you're having to like manually enter stuff. Use the Lofty. If you're using Lofty, let Lofty push everything in for you. It just makes life so much easier. These are some of your basic settings. So like, I've got, this is how I label the broker name. So we have our team name, and then I've got, real broker put under there. I put the brokerage, the address that we have for the office space that we use. You can add the agents, your lenders, your vendors. So like if you've got, vendors that you work with a lot, you can add them in here. You can play with your lead capture settings. So I have mine set for higher conversion, which means that it's going to immediately trigger for registration on all listing detail pages. And it does not allow for the registration pop-up to be closed, because if it allows the pop-up to be closed, you'll see an X right here. The higher quality, it just puts a 10-second timer on that. So the idea is that somebody could look at this and they'd be able to click through the pictures. And as they're clicking through, it's going to do the pop-up. You'll get, as it says, higher quality leads, maybe not as many, but I look at it and go, well, if they're higher quality anyways, let them funnel through. I'll give it a shot. And then you could customize it, and you could turn, set it up any way you'd like. Then you could go through and you can change the pop-up style. You can change colors. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can change the questions. You could change a lot of this stuff inside of here. You can actually block emails. So if somebody keeps registering on your site, you can just, and they're kind of harassing or, whatever, you can add them to a blocked email list, and basically they won't be able to register on your site again, which is kind of slick. Easier integrations, like I mentioned, analytics, tag manager, Google Ads, Google My Business, your Facebook pixel, Rate Your Agent, Zillow, AdWorks. So these are some integrations that you can plug in, and even, whether you're the admin site or the agent site, these stay the same. So there's not much that changes from this perspective. All right. This piece here, I call the circle of success. This is how I work inside of the Lofty platform on a day-by-day basis, right? So that's honestly, this is probably the biggest thing I see agents, kind of struggle with the Lofty platform, is they come in and they go, I don't know what to do, right? Day by day, like there's so many flashy things, like where do I start? What do I click on first? Where do I begin? And so what we call the circle of success, it says, all right, well, let's organize it, right? I want to check my tasks. I want to clear up my today tasks. I want to clear up my overdue tasks. I want to work my leads. I want to check my conversations inbox. I want to check my opportunities. I want to clean up all my notifications, and I want to check my personal again, because it also includes my AI conversations. So what does that look like? This is the circle of success. It's more like an arc, but circle made more sense because arc of success, circles, I don't know, just sounded better. So you start here, click Lofty, and this is your dashboard. In my dashboard, I can see, do I have new leads, opportunities, tasks? So I always go right to the task manager. If you click on the 0, it'll bring you right to, your tasks. If you've got some overdue tasks, you click on those and you clear your tasks, just do them. One thing I can say is that if you're using your segments properly, what ends up happening is, by default, most agents, what they do is, if I've got a new lead, Larry and Mary, all their friends probably make fun of them for that, but they're hot lead, right? So you're like, I'm going to call them like every 2 to 3 days. And so you set up a recurring task every 2 days, every 3 days, you're constantly creating tasks. But if you have all these tasks that are connected specifically just to an actual lead, then what ends up happening is your tasks turn into hundreds. So like in Brivity and in Fusionsoft and KV Core, I would wake up and I would have minimum 60 to 70 tasks per day, minimum. And so I spend all this time just, doing these things and clearing them up, because you're in the task, you're in the lead, and it just says call. You're looking at it, you're reading the notes, you're doing your thing, and then you have to remember to check off the task and then go on to the next one. By using the segments, it separates it out and allows you to, just work the leads inside of that. And so what ends up happening is your tasks actually become, these are your clerical things. So if I need to do a CMA, that I'm going to put into my tasks. If I have an active listing that I need to, maybe do my weekly follow-up with my seller, those are in my tasks. If I have to, do order signs, if I have to, whatever it is, those are inside my tasks. So I understand my tasks are clerical stuff. It keeps my task number low, because basically the idea is, if it's not relationship based, if it's just clerical, it goes into tasks. All your relationships are managed through your segments. So that's how I set that up. So number 2, I go to my people, right? So I click on my people, we go back to the segments and the people thing. And, as it says here, I parse my new leads. So I want to know, when you click on that people thing, you'll have new leads in there. My thought process is, you should never end your day with anybody in your database listed as new. New means you've not reached out to them. If you've not reached out to them, That's bad, right? That's not good. That you've either not reached out to them or you haven't segmented out or we call it parsed out. You haven't parsed out the new lead. That's not good. You should never leave a contact record without knowing the next time you're reaching out to them. So leaving them in new means you didn't do that. That's your number one job. You didn't do your job. So when I work my leads, I parse out my new leads, then I work my segments. I call my prospects. So I go into the prospect thing. I have a segment called call prospects, and it's set up to different categories. And so my newer leads, it's set to call them every 2 to 3 days. My maybe 2 to 3 week old leads, it's set to call once a week. My month old leads, that's once every month. So it actually, I have it move through the funnel. So I'm not calling everybody every 2 days. It slows down as they don't respond. So I'm also not wasting my time calling people who are never going to answer the phone. And then of course, I want to work my database. I want to work my sphere of influence. That's all part of inside of number 2. Now, inside of number 3, those are my opportunities, right? It's going to show me Joe Smith came back and was looking at properties. Bob saved the property. It'll show up here as well, but it's, you may miss it. So it's nice to have it, sorry, that's number 4. Number 3, sorry. Number 3 is your timeline. It shows you who all of your calls are coming in from. Sorry, I guess I don't have a sample of that. It shows you it's a timeline of all your calls. It's a conversation view. It's almost like you're looking at an email browser, and it shows you everybody that you're having conversations with. And so you can just go through, click, 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 and then anybody who's got a red dot to it, that just means you haven't responded to them. 4, those are your opportunities that shows you they saved the property, they've been back to the website after 7 days, 4 weeks, they've returned, they've looked at a property. So it'll actually tell you if they've looked at a property 3 times, it'll show up in opportunities. So this is where you're kind of scouring and saying who's raising their hand, right? That's the number one thing I hear people say. How do I know who's raising their hand inside of my database? That's right here, this opportunities tab. 5 is your alerts. There's a series of alerts in there. You just go through those. It's just you're looking for the opportunities there. And if you do this daily, this takes no time at all. You spend most of your time right here inside the people, and then this time here takes minimal time. Now, if you go down to 6, this is where it's really the arc, but we call it the circle because you always end up coming back here. So I always just kind of that's how I work my day. And then in 6, when that pops up, it shows you your current conversations, very similar to what this does, but it also has a tab on top where you can look at your AI conversations, and you can review and make sure you didn't miss any conversations that the AI had with your potential leads, because there's nothing worse than maybe you forgot to do that piece, and then 2 weeks later you click on it, you're like, oh crap, like how did I miss this opportunity? Granted, it should show up in your opportunities, but once again, if you're not checking this stuff daily, you're missing out on cash. At the end of the day, the whole purpose of this is I'm looking for opportunities. Who's raising their hand? Who can I talk to? Well, that's how we find it out. Wrong way. So let's hit landing pages. Landing pages are probably one of my favorite things inside of, as far as like a featured like marketing tool. You could feature new listings. One thing, side note, is new listings are created automatically. You can create listing searches, which includes new, open house. So maybe you want to advertise and use as a squeeze page. So landing pages are squeeze pages. If you are looking for those, it's called landing pages inside of Lofty. KV Court was called squeeze pages. I think even Brevity was called squeeze pages. So depending on what you're doing, it's great for like blanket searches. So horse property, acre lots with pools, whatever you want to do as far as a blanket search. Same, I guess it's the same as a niche search, condos, whatever it is, community search, schools, whatever it is that you're trying to really narrow down your area of expertise, create a landing page around it. You can use it as a lead registration form. So you could just have a landing page that says register here. So if you're at an open house, scan this to register, boom. If you're at a booth at if you get a booth at like a wedding thing, I know a lot of agents who do that. Create a landing page where people can just go in, log in their information right there. So that's great. You can use the featured area pages. Like I said, results may vary. We talked about that earlier. You could create buyer guide downloads. So where they go on and there's a buyer guide, they just have to fill in their information. Boom, your buyer and seller guides are available for download, for download. Home valuation, I use this one a lot. Request your home value. They fill it in, boom, you instantly get their, at least the address of their property. If they fill it out fully, then you get their contact information. You can do live tours. So some people would call this maybe like a virtual open house. So got to connect it with either your Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or Zoom. One thing I will tell you about YouTube Live, you can't do a live YouTube unless you have at least 50 subscribers to your channel. So maybe you start with Facebook Live. And then the account owner has access to build custom landing pages where they can basically take all of the same plugins from the main website, and they can put it into an individual landing page, which is pretty cool. Smart plans. So these are gold. The ones that are already built in, they've already given you, like when you log on for the first time, you probably already have like a page or two worth of already pre-built landing page, or sorry, smart plans. Those are great. We haven't modified any of those. We've imported a bunch that's in the library. We have customized and built a lot as well. You can customize your client's experience through what we call recurring plans. Obviously triggers are your best friend. So when this happens, trigger this campaign or smart plan. You can trigger based on lead score, interaction with website. And, if you haven't looked at it, they've got a lead score. So the more that a client comes back and hits the website and interacts, their lead score goes up. So you could so the idea is, just think about it this way, right? The problem is everybody takes marketing and real estate from a shotgun approach. It's like, you're in my website, boom, I just shoot everybody with the exact same information at the exact same time. The idea is that the lead that comes in that never interacts with, if you just continue to hit them with emails, you're actually hurting your email open rate and your online email score. So why continue to highly market to somebody who's not interacting at all? But when they hit a certain level and they start to interact with it, their lead score goes up. Okay, now I'm going to launch a campaign. So it's more of a programmed retargeting than it is really anything else. And then, like I said, you can move leads through pipelines automatically based on time, interaction. There's so much you can do with this. I mean, this smart plans conversation, that's a 2-hour class in itself. This is kind of a preview of the library. So these are just like the ones that you can just download. So you go through here, and there was probably like 75 of these things. And if you like it, you click on it here. So where it says buyer, just click on it. It'll open it up, give you the outline. If you like it, import it. I like these, shows you how long it's going to last. Long-term nurture buyer leads, 458 days. Yes, please. I don't want to have to write that. That's a lot of work to write a 458-day campaign. Just look at it. If it looks good, import it. Like, why reinvent the wheel? These are some of the reoccurring plans. So every New Year, you could, maybe you have a certain list of people that you want to send a Happy New Year, Christmas, Valentine's Day, birthday. So as you get people's birthdays, it'll send them something. You can connect this to, there's so much you could do for interaction. If you have like Thanks.io, or you can use the built-in postcards that Lofty has. So you can say, okay, every time this birthday comes in, send off this postcard. Lead dates. So you can create custom dates. So if maybe you weren't using the transactions piece of Lofty, but you still want to go back and you've got all these people who closed, well, you can create a custom field called, closing anniversary. Maybe you want to have a separate one that says wedding anniversary. So that way it's separate. Most databases I've run into, they just have anniversary, and you're always like, well, is that for their wedding anniversary, or is that for their house anniversary? If you have an investor, you could put in like, okay, well, house 1 anniversary, house 2 anniversary. I mean, you could add as many custom fields as you want and create recurring plans based on this, which is absolutely phenomenal. These are the different triggers. So as the lead comes in, just be cautious. I made this mistake. I went right into this lead meets specified conditions to try to trigger a campaign. And it wasn't triggering. And the reason why I wasn't triggering is because I didn't use this one. So this one says, the key with this one is that as the lead comes in, so for all your inbound leads, use this as your piece. The rest of these are all behavior based off of your current leads that are in the system. So if you, for instance, right here, segment changed or your pipeline changed, for instance, like if you've got a lead that's listed as active and they go under contract and you move them to pending, you could have that trigger an email or some sort of campaign that goes out, and you could have it said, well, is it, this one here? Okay, well, this is triggered based off of a buyer. This is triggered based off of a seller. Oh, congratulations, your home is under contract. Congratulations, you got, you found a house, whatever it is. Here's our next steps. You can build smart plans based off of these changes and triggers that you've created. This is based off of website behavior. So this is where, the lead scores up. They haven't been on the website in 6 months, and all of a sudden they come back. Boom, you can trigger a campaign. Hey, just, welcome back, or whatever you want to do. So much you can do inside of these triggers to make something happen in there. This is kind of gives you an idea as far as the advanced triggers and conditions you can do. So like I said, lead score, when their segment is no segment or it moves over to one. You can just keep adding on and on and on, customize some of your settings. You can do last touch. So if they've not been contacted in 30 days, so that one's good for like lead, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like managing your leads inside your team, or even just reminding you, because sometimes you have so many leads come in, you forget. It's like, look, if this lead has not been touched, not been contacted in 2 weeks or 1 week or 3 days, I need to know about it. So you can build a reminder campaign based off of that. That'll send you an email, say, hey, this lead came in 3 days ago and you haven't done anything with it. Now you know what to do with it. This is key here. So this is a new construction lead program that we have. So these target lead types you can choose. They added all these different things recently. So what you want to do is include one of, not include all, because if you use the include all, what ends up happening is if you check everything, that means that it will only trigger if everything is checked. If you have include one of, you can select everything in here, and as long as one of them is selected, then it'll trick. Equals to is going to be very precise and say it has to be this. The thing I like about this piece here is you can build in the auto pause. So if the lead responds or reaches out, then you can actually automatically move it to a segment, which is awesome. And based on that, now you've moved it to a segment, you've built in a reminder. You can have it pause when an outbound call is logged as talked. So if I call the lead, these campaigns are designed, in my opinion, to trigger a response. So if I've gotten a response, I need that campaign paused immediately. I didn't check this one, but I could have. If I've moved tags. So these are all things that are going to pause the campaign and make it stop. This just gives you an example. So one of the things that we do is we mute the AI assistant. So I don't want the AI kicking in when I'm still trying to reach out to people, but then we also unpause it after a day. The goal is, once again, as I said before, the agent starts, the AI assists. That's why it's called the AI assistant. I don't want us working side by side. Some people argue with me on that. It's up to you, but I mute the AI assistant, and this is almost immediately in that campaign. These are some communication strategies. We've kind of run up our time, so I'm going to go through this quick. Ideas to override email subjects. So what you can do is you can change the alert name and you can change the subject name. So I do this, especially inside like my farm or specific areas. I want my farm to see, like the neighborhood I farm is called Val Vista Lakes. So I want any email that goes out to my farm to say Val Vista Lakes. I want it to make them pause versus just delete the email. I want them to open it. So that's how you can override it there. And then you just have the alert name changed as well. This is a way you can do an override of every email that goes out. So one thing you'll see is every property alert that goes out, I have it set to say your agent, Len Nevin, whoever it is on the team, your agent has found a new home for you to look at. I found that our open rate jumped when we did this. It's a little personalization touch that's gone a long way for us. You could change the email template here as well. This is where I said you've got all the the tags up top on how to do that. And this is how it shows. So when you click on this edit piece right here, this is where it shows this piece right here. Your agent has found a new home for you to look at, and then you can actually change the opening email in there as well. Inside text messages, if you hit this little house, you can actually send people a link directly to a property, which is amazing. People, you can see when they open it, all that stuff helps tremendously. One thing that we do, so like if I've got a property or a lead that's getting sent properties, all I do is I click inside the contact record, I click on the actual name of the search. This shows the email, I hit view all new listings. And what ends up happening is it opens up the URL, and this is the URL. I cannot send them this. So I use this program called Short.io, and it actually shows up as a shortcut on my browser. So when I'm on the website, I just click on this and it shortens it down to this. It allowed me to actually use a vanity URL. So it looks more like it's coming from me versus like a bit.ly. I was using bit.ly, but they just changed their plan. So now it was only allowing me to do 20 of these shorteners per month. And now I can send them this link versus sending them that. And that's going to be much better to do. Inside of here, if you click on the listings tab, if I'm doing a search, so for instance, I just put in Gilbert, 499,000, there's over 300 people inside of my database that this matches. I can now hit this little icon right here and send a text message to all 301 of these people, because they've got a search set up in Lofty that has that property, that has a basically criteria that says they're looking for something in the 499 range. I can now say, hey, did you see this new property that just hit the market? Do you want to go see it? We get tons of responses on those emails or those text messages. So lastly, lead capture. We already kind of covered the universal settings for the website, landing page settings. We use a lot of Facebook ads, and so I use Zapier to send those directly into Lofty. You could put landing page links inside of your YouTube descriptions. That's something I highly recommend. So if you're doing YouTube videos, have links in there. And then text codes are awesome as well. We use them for our sign writers, and then any advertising you're doing online as well. You can just say, hey, text, Bob, or Main Street to my number for more information, and you can build it out. So that's kind of how we're using some of those lead capture pieces. If you have questions on that, feel free to reach out. And like I said, we already went over that. And then you can set it on side of here. Never require based on page views. So this is how you kind of set up your overall lead registration, and you can set it to private lead, team lead, and then who it wants to go to. So inside of that landing page, you can, I can create a landing page for somebody on my team and then make sure it goes directly to them at any time. This is the text code creator. So I can just click on a listing, it'll automatically fill in the listing, and then I can change and, set the message any way I'd like. So that's it. If you want a copy of this presentation, and actually a link to this recording, feel free to text Lofty to this phone number here. That's my Lofty number. It will send you immediately a PDF of this entire presentation. You'll get that link almost immediately. If you're looking for any help with setup on your Lofty or anything like that, just text setup to this same number, and I'd be happy to, set up a time to talk to you, help you set it up, and kind of go from there. So feel free to also text me any questions that you had from this directly to this number. I'd be happy to answer those questions as well. We went over just a few minutes, and I've got another meeting here starting here right away. So thank you for joining, and hopefully catch you guys next time. Thanks. That's where all these people were.